We turn now to Nigeria, which is an African powerhouse. It has incredible promise, but also incredible difficulties. It is gearing up for its next presidential election. Since the end of military rule in 1999, every Nigerian president has come from one of two major political parties. Enter now Oby Ezekwesili. She is an outsider. She's an anti-corruption activist who wants to become Nigeria's first female president. She co-founded Transparency International, the anti-corruption agency, and she spearheaded Bring Back Our Girls to free hundreds of schoolgirls kidnapped by the terrorist group Boko Haram. She also wants to help alleviate the massive income inequality amongst Nigerians. For example, only 5% of the population there is said to have health insurance. The rest, no matter how poor, have to pay or stay in hospital until they or their relatives can pay. I spoke to her recently between campaign stops to ask how she thinks she can make a dent against the current president and the former vice president, who are both running for president now. Oby Ezekwesili, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Would I be right in saying that yours is a real long-shot candidacy? You're one of the smaller parties. The main established parties are kind of duking it out between themselves. What do you really expect to achieve by running for president?
I hope to disrupt the politics of failure, the politics of bad governance and bad leadership that has only produced dismal results, such that today Nigeria is the world capital of extreme poverty. It's totally unacceptable. That's what I intend to do, to disrupt this and build a nation that is based on prosperity, stability, cohesion, and equality of opportunity for our people.
Okay, so let's break this down, because we have a graphic that shows that Nigeria has overtaken India as the world's greatest concentration of extreme poverty. 87 million Nigerians live in extreme poverty, and it's growing by 6 people per minute. I guess what everybody will want to know is this. Nigeria is known for rampant corruption. I mean, unbelievable amounts of corruption. It is also a really potentially rich state with all your oil, with all your natural resources. I mean, how is it possible that 87 million Nigerians live at the poverty line or below?
It is what happens when there is bad governance. Bad governance is so endemic when there are no expectations of results from those that govern society, and therefore there's no demand for accountability. And even when there is demand for accountability, there's no incentive on the part of the people who govern to produce results. I was one of the co-founders of Transparency International, and we know that corruption is a tax on the poor. And we already know that there are ways to tackle corruption. You prevent opportunities for corruption, you reduce corruption. And part of what my agenda is to deregulate the economy in the kind of way that public officials don't have too much presence in the economy to be able to utilize it for personal gain. And also to complement the actions on the prevention side with a system that punishes corruption every time it happens, because then you create a deterrence against that very malignant, cancerous action that has kept our country underdeveloped, more than anything that we could have imagined at independence.
Yeah, you know, it is extraordinary, because all those things that you say make us sit back and take notice, particularly because we see so much Nigerian money coming out of Nigeria, spent in the West on high-end real estate, on all sorts of, you know, playground of the rich and the powerful. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, other people have complained as well, including the current president, about corruption. They've all pledged to somehow wipe it out. How will you take on these vested interests, these people who have, I guess, a reason to keep the system and the status quo?
Well, the society knows me for having taken on them before. I was the one that worked on the fixing of our public procurement system. It was chaotic until I entered government many years ago, a decade plus ago, and I effected the reform of the public procurement system, and through an initiative that was called due process. As a result of that work, that fixed our public procurement, that used to be the honeypot of the politicians, the country began to call me Madam Due Process. So the politicians know me. I am not a stranger to them at all. What I did in Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative is well known globally. So I am not one who's going to be faced by the strength of our political class. I think that the lack of courage on the part of our society to stare down at these ones who have given us bad governance is now over. It is time to confront it. And I believe that I am the candidate of the Nigerian people. I am not running alone. As we say, we are all running. All of us that want a different country, a new direction for our country, are running together. This is a contest between the established class of politicians who have not delivered anything meaningful in governance and the rest of us. I simply am the candidate who is providing a direction for the rest of society to take on these folks.
Now, as you mentioned, of course, you've been recognized for many of your efforts, not just Transparency International, which got you a Nobel Peace Prize nomination, but also you spearheaded the Bring Back Our Girls movement when Boko Haram stole all those hundreds of Nigerian schoolgirls. Tell me a little bit about how you came to do that, your experience in public policy in the public sector in Nigeria.
Well, I was saddened. I mean, sad is such an underwhelming word to describe how I felt, that my society was failing the children of the poor who went to school, girls who went to school. When I was Minister of Education, one of my reform areas had been in getting more girls to go to school, especially in northern Nigeria, where for every 5 boys in school, only 1 girl would be in school. And so when these girls went to school and were abducted, what I expected from our government was immediate, swift response. But that did not happen. And I was completely aghast at it. And I decided that on the basis of my shared humanity with those girls, that I was going to be a voice for them until they all come back. As far as I am concerned, we have no credentials on which to ask girls to go to school around the world until the rest of the world and all of us, especially our government, bring the remaining 112 Chibok girls back, as well as Leah Sharibu, as well as Alice, a humanitarian aid worker who was abducted in the course of meeting the needs of those who are displaced in our country.
You bring up another major issue. It's not just humanitarian, but it's security. Your country is in a state of war with Boko Haram. Do you have a plan for dealing with that aspect at the source, at the root? There's terrorism and there's war there.
I think that the number one thing is we had a research at the World Bank that showed that in environments of conflict, the most important thing to do is to get that community thinking about jobs again, providing economic livelihoods for the people, because that then dries up the sources of young people who have no stake in society and who are willing to unleash violence on their own society. So broadening security to be human security is a major strategy for me. And the second bit is to completely overhaul our security system and to ensure that there is performance accountability that is tied to resource adequacy. And the third thing is to make a lot out of intelligence. Today's cutting-edge technology means that we can be preemptive, we can be proactive, we can be preventive. And that means we must work with our neighbors. We must work with the rest of the world that can offer us support in every kind of definition of cutting-edge, expensive technology that would enable us have greater surveillance over our country and people.
All the candidates running, including yourself, are pro-American. You were educated at Harvard for a period of time, and, it's the second richest country in Africa. What kind of a relationship would you expect to have with the United States, and particularly with President Trump, who has his own views about Africa, a transactional relationship, and he also his own, you've heard what he said about a lot of African countries. I don't need to repeat it.
I wouldn't be dignifying any of the pejorative words that have been used by the President of America. What I would simply do is show to the President of America that he's a contemporary in the leadership of countries, his country and me leading my own country. And what I would try to show clearly to him is that it is of interest to America that they should maintain the global norms that enable America to be a leading economy in the world. As we watch the trend of the global economy, it is very clear that even the US needs to continue to do even more with the rest of the world in order to maintain a reasonable level of economic prosperity and trajectory that it has been known for. Our country, Nigeria, is a leading country in the world. We definitely have a lot of contributions that are notable around the world.